Hey everybody, I'm Robert. Welcome back to the channel. And now we're joined by George. You might have seen a couple days ago, a couple weeks ago, heck, a month ago that we did a video with Pete where we walked around and Pete showed us all the imperfections in the car, all the things he wanted to do to the paint. We're going to do the same thing with George. For those of you that don't know, George is the Apex lead mechanic. He takes care of really more cars than he probably has time for. Would that be about right?
Yep, that's all right. Or space for.
Or space for, yeah, exactly. And so George is taking care of the Apex fleet, from the rental cars to the taxis, all the way down to my personal fleet of cars that obviously sometimes get used, well, mostly get used on the Nürburgring as well. Yeah. And so he's the guy that's taking care of all this. It doesn't matter if it's oil change on the 218i, brake swaps on the 720S or the 675. He's doing anything and everything in between. He's actually also building all of our race cars. So right now, George is actually building a Cupra race car that we're going to run in RCN. So he's got his hands full. And I went, and I went ahead and bought a Yaris and told him we're going to build it. And he found out about it on YouTube.
Yeah, I was upset.
How'd that make you feel?
No, it's cool. I expect nothing less. It's all spur of the moment stuff, isn't it? It's just, it's how things are. It's just
hype car comes, we got to get it.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. It's got to come. It's got to be done. So.
But speaking of projects, we went and picked up the E30 M3, which is a car that obviously we all know I'm very, very excited about. It's a car that
we all are.
It's neat, isn't it? It takes us back to a cool time in BMW history, and I think for most automotive enthusiasts, this is a car that speaks to them in one way or the other, so it's a lot of fun. What I would like to do is basically talk with George, talk with you about this car, what you saw, because we are starting a project on it. By now, we've made videos about what the plans are with this car. We're going to basically put a carbon airbox on it. We're going to change the cams. We're going to change the exhaust. Obviously, with that, we need to do mapping. We're going to put JRZ suspension on the car. What else? We're going to do a big thing that I'm really excited about is putting a radio in it. I want to put an old school looking radio in the car. There's a lot of things that we want to do to make the car ready for us to drive it, ready for me to drive it and have fun with, but also to do it safely and really enjoy the car. When you went and you looked at the car the first time, what did you see on the car? Was there anything that you were worried about mechanically, rust-wise, corrosion-wise, anything like that?
Straight off the bat, not really. There was the undersill on some of the parts underneath were, it was a little bit sketchy. Some of it looks a bit like, oh, hold on, what's this hiding? But when you scrape it back, there's nothing. It's just a
So this is almost the, I don't want to say epoxy, but the sealant that goes underneath to protect the bottom of the car.
The Tetrasil black sealant stuff that people just spray on. I guess they've probably scraped it back themselves to check something and then just
plastered it back on. Okay.
I guess that's why most people would do it on a car like this. But all in all, the corrosion stuff, there's barely any corrosion on the car. It's actually really good condition. So normally on E30s you get there's the panel that comes up in here and then goes up onto the turret. This normally rots in the corners. You normally get rust on top of the turrets. Down here in the scuttle panel you get rut. Around the windscreen, loads of places, but this hasn't. So this is clearly been dry stored. You can see it's been looked after. Again, haven't taken the side skirts off yet, so we're not 100% sure yet on what that could be hiding, but from what you can see by putting them back underneath, there's no rot on the seals, which is cool.
And so you can hope that if all of this stuff, from the sunroof to the A-pillars to all these areas in front of the fender and everything like that, if that's all in pretty good shape, you can only hope that the rest of it is.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's always the opportunity to be surprised, right?
Exactly. I mean, on a car this old, you would expect to see if there was rot, then it would be elsewhere. You'd be able to see it, and it'd be in other places as well. Again, around the sunroof, around the drains, nothing there. That's all pretty good. The boot floor, the rear valance, the number plate, it's all good. So it's surprisingly it's in good shape.
Well, that's good. I'm obviously glad to hear that. When you get an old car, we obviously try to do our due diligence when we bought it and look as closely as we could and look at as much history as we can. And you're always open for surprises. There's always that possibility that something can come up. Now, we're going to get ready to modify the car. But before we do that, we need to take care of a few problems, because I was ready to tear the motor out, rebuild it, and do all these different things. Yeah. If we're going to put camshafts in the car, airbox and exhaust, we need to obviously make sure that everything is good with the motor. So when you were going under the car, what did you see? Leaks, any issues that you saw from the oiling system, the coolant system, power steering, anything like that?
So the only small issues that we saw was there's an oil leak from the front, which looks to be, I'm not 100% familiar with this engine yet, so I don't know if this is a standard feature on the engine, but there was looked like a blank, so someone's put a blank in for like an old oil level sensor or something, old pressure sensor or something. that looks like it's what the oil leak is.
So basically a plug in the oil.
Yeah, basically that.
Okay.
So I'll check that out, clean it up, run the engine for a while and see if it leaks from there again. And there is a power steering hose, which is the return hose, which looks to be leaking from a union. So to be honest, it's literally take the pipe off. If it's perished, cut it, put a Jubilee clip on and see if it leaks anymore before we replace the pipe.
Got it. So the clip could be failed or the hose could be starting to get maybe a little...
The car's been sitting for a while, and as we all know, cars don't like to sit. You get things corrode, you get things perish, especially rubber hoses.
So based on that, then it would be a good idea really just to get a kit for every rubber hose on this car and replace it.
Oh, for sure, yeah. I mean, I'm sure Samco or someone will do a silicone hose kit, which, although you go away from the classic look, it's a no-brainer in some cases.
Yeah, I think for me, I want to maybe find some OEM stuff just to have in case you can't get it anymore. But at the same time, I do want to drive the car.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to worry. This is one of the things I've said before about renting cars on the Nürburgring. The last thing I want to do is take an old car and have a hose fail, a pipe fail, have an oil spill, have a coolant spill, and create problems for myself or even more so for other people. And that's something we can do. Even if it goes away from the classic look, we can get a black silicone hose, replace the black rubber hoses, and be safe, right?
Exactly. And to be honest, if you're going to use the car on the track, I would always, if there's a modification that you can do which isn't a big problem and is actually going to improve that side of things, then for sure do it.
Now, a lot of people have actually asked, Robert, why do you need to rebuild the transmission if the car only has 47,000 kilometers on it? I had to laugh, but I'll let you, I'm kind of springing this on George, so I apologize.
No, it's fine.
But why, what do you think? I mean, I think, well, you go ahead and tell me what you think. Why would we take it out and look at it? Why even bother? It's got 47,000 kilometers.
So it's got 47,000 kilometers. That's 47,000 unknown kilometers. This is a 30-year-old car, which we know very small history of. So, as is every used car, you can't just go by someone's word. It needs to be a case of you find out for yourself. Mm-hmm. We don't know if this gearbox was run dry for 6 months.
Right.
Someone could have not put the correct oil in. Someone could have messed something up along the line somewhere and tried to just cover it up.
Right.
We don't know. So, if we're going back to a bare shell and we're going to the extent of rebuilding the engine, it just makes sense.
It's just part of the process.
Yeah, it's part of the process. It's something for the peace of mind.
Right.
We rebuilt this. We know that this is new. It's good.
It's done.
It's done.
And that's, for me, I can tell you that driving the car back, I've put about 300 kilometers on it myself. I know that's not a lot, but everything, the transmission's quiet, the synchros mesh very well. There's no obvious issues with it. So at my stance right now, we'll check the fluid, we'll look at the fluid, we'll see how everything is, and we'll drive it. If there's no leaks, if there's no nothing, we'll let it be until we take the motor out.
But yeah, I mean, when it comes to that, the chances are we strip it and it's actually everything's as it should be.
That's what we can only hope for, right? But how long does it take you to open up a transmission and see what things look like?
On an old transmission like this, not long.
So it's worth
once the transmission's out on the table, you can have it stripped in an hour.
So it's worth the investment to look at it and make sure. So that's the thing, guys. So we're not just building cars and just saying, well, it doesn't need it. We're actually wanting to build something and make sure that it works, make sure it's perfect, and make sure it's ready to go.
You don't take a car back to a bare shell and then skimp out just for the sake of stripping the transmission.
Right.
If you're going to all this extent of work, you don't like go all the way back to bare metal and then go, oh, you know what, I'm going to use really cheap primer. You just don't. So it's the same as if you're rebuilding an engine.
Right.
The transmission needs to come off. You just check it.
Now, one of the things I'm excited for, probably one of the there's two mods that there's 20 mods I'm excited for. 3 mods I'm excited for: camshafts, suspension, and tire or wheels. I really am excited to get some BBS. I'm going to go with a silver wheel with this combination. I don't want to go gold with blue. That's not my favorite. But I want to go with a nice polished silver hat. But to go with the wheels, we need suspension.
Yep.
We're going to do a JRZ 3-way adjustable suspension. I said before I might want to do a 1-way, and JRZ said, Robert, you know what? We can do a 3-way, and it's going to be even more adjustable. You're really going to love it. So let's do a 3-way suspension. So that's what we're going to do. Now we're going to do coilovers in the front, and we're going to start with a separate shock and spring in the rear in the stock format.
Yep.
And then after we paint the car, we'll go to a coilover. Maybe you can explain the reason why not to go to a coilover now, but we could do a coilover with paint. And finally, is there a way that we could just go straight to the coilover now? Because
so as you might have seen on one of Misha's videos recently of the M4, when we walked over the M4, if you look at the rear suspension, you have the separate shock and spring set up, which is not the coilover. It's a fine it's a good way to do it. It's no problem. But ideally, you want a coilover setup. It's
more
easier.
ride height adjustability, simplicity.
Simplicity. The reason you can't go straight to it on something like this on an older car is the strut tower tops haven't got the strength, so you need to put reinforcement on these strut tops. The car was never designed to have all of the
load on
one point. So this is why you have the separate.
So right now we have 2 pickup points for the weight of the back of the car, and that's one is the spring and one is the shock essentially, right?
Yeah.
You have 2 loads, and what we would ultimately be doing is the bulk of the weight is on the spring, but we would be relocating that
all onto
the shock.
Yeah.
So the shock mount would now be taking the entire weight of the car, where it used to be where the spring was. So we can basically reinforce that.
I guess the best way to do it would be making, I don't know if someone might already make these plates off the shelf, which will be formed around the strut tower, which is welded on.
I think we know somebody that knows it. Tom Schirmer will.
Tom's probably going to watch this video and go, that's just wrong.
He's going to be over here with smoking a cigarette, welding in a plate tomorrow.
So yeah, I'll confer with Tom most of the stuff before going ahead with it, because he's, as you say, he's a specialist.
Tom Schirmer is going to be a great source of really parts and insight for this car.
Yeah.
It's not a Schirmer car in the sense of this right here. This is our M4 VLN spec car. This is a full race car built by Schirmer. It's their own wide body. We've got the Team Schirmer XX31 E92 M3. Again, 2 cars that really set the stage and speak Team Schirmer. And I wanted to do the full M3 collection, and this is my version of the E30 for that M3 collection. So this is going to be one of those. And so it is going to have a big influence from Team Schirmer, because I want to have their guidance on the suspension. I want to have all of their bushings and all of any kinematic parts that they can replace and make sure they work. I want all of that to be in there, and I want his support in it so that he makes sure that the car also has the right parts in it. So it will be a lighter version of a Schirmer car in the sense that it will be set up by him. He'll have a lot of say in it, and provide parts for things like this, shock top mount support and things like that.
Exactly.
And Tom, if you see this video and we can do coilovers right away, just let me know. But yeah, so anything that concerns you about this car, is there anything that you saw that you're like, oh shit?
Nothing really in terms of stripping down. I mean, it's a 90s car. They're so simple.
Right.
It's not like stripping the M4. If you said we're taking the M4 back to a bare shell, I think I'd have to sit and contemplate life for an hour, because there's so much.
It's a lot of work. Huh?
Yeah, exactly. Older cars are a lot easier. The biggest problem with the older cars is the one thing I'm stressing out the most is the plastic trims and all the rest of the 30-year-old plastic trims.
I mentioned that to Pete, and I said, if I can find it, if we can locate it, I want to replace all the rubber, all the plastic, all the little felt strips. I just hope we can find it. I think that the E30 market is big enough, and most of these parts are interchangeable with the E30s, non-M. I think we'll be able to find it, and that is one thing I'm really hoping we can do.
Yeah, I think we might even be surprised if BMW still manufactures some of these parts.
Right.
It wouldn't surprise me. Like I said earlier,
let's hope so.
We was talking, even Nissan have started reproducing RB26 engines.
The thing is,
like that, so
if BMW's not producing the parts, we can just get it from a Lamborghini Huracan, right?
Oh yeah. Just whatever fits, isn't it?
Guys, no, but so you have no major concerns.
Really,
are you excited about the project?
I am, yeah.
Cool.
Out of all of the projects that have been spoken about recently, this is going to be the one that's
cool.
That's going to be really cool.
Well, I'm really excited for this project. I'm eager to see this take off. I'm eager to get underway. I really want, when March comes, when the track opens, I want to be out on the track in this car, so that's my goal. Not painting it red really helps that goal.
Yeah. That's the main point, yeah.
So I'm hoping that, maybe not my first lap, but depending on the weather and everything, I really am hoping to get this out on the track in March and get to experience what I've always talked about, is that lap in a cool car. You're just cruising. You're just having a good time. You're having fun. That's what I'm after. And I'm looking forward to taking first my family out, and then the Apex crew that's helped put it together. So
riding shotgun after that. So.
Yep, he's got shotgun. Misha will be in the back asleep. He don't care. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you, George. I really appreciate the insight. And any questions you have about this car, about this project, be sure to let me know, and we'll be happy to answer it. Take it easy, guys.
Cool.